morning. Well, if you've been wondering why we haven't put out a video, it's been quite cold and windy here for the last couple of days. A little cold front that passed through, and we've just waited for the opportune moment to get out and spend some time with you again. And as you can see, it's an absolute glorious morning. No wind, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful sunrise, and just a little bit of a nip in the air. So we definitely can feel that we're potentially transitioning from autumn into winter. So being a nice morning, let's get out there and see what we can find. Just switch the vehicle off here a little bit, just listening at the bird call, the chorus of many different species of birds, and then focusing on that marula tree there with the beautiful sunlight on it. So we're in luck this morning. We found this set of tracks here belonging to a lioness. Just behind me, you can't see now, there's another set. So there's two lions walking here. You basically notice, if you look at the track here, you've got the front foot and then the back foot. But in the back foot, that's a lot more clearer. You can see that classic three-lobe structure in the pad at the back. And those three lobes are what actually sets the cat tracks apart from any other dog-like or dog-type animals, such as a hyena, for instance. That's only got two lobes in the pad structure. So we're going to follow these tracks a little bit and see where they go. And you never know, maybe we're lucky. Maybe we find them. We're looking at a beautiful redback shrike here, sitting on the stump. It's the male of the species. Usually not that accommodating to sit out in the open like this, often diving into thick bush and skulking and hiding when a vehicle approaches. So we're actually lucky to see this one like that. They're summer visitors to this area, and heading towards the end of April now, they'll pretty soon start heading back. being a guide, we often use other clues lying around, like tracks and dung and so on and so forth, to help indicate the presence of animals to us. In this particular case, if you have a look here, you'd notice these peculiar little balls, and each little dung ball actually looks like it's granular, made out of small tiny little granules. And this belongs to the Mopani worm, and it is referred to more in the scientific community as frass, F-R-A-S-S. If you look underneath the trees here, the Mopani trees, you'd notice quite a lot of it lying around, which then gives us an indication that there must be some Mopani worms around. So we've been lucky because we've discovered one. So here we've located one of the worms. There's a lot of them around here. If you listen carefully for a minute, you may hear this fine little crackle sound, which is actually the worms feeding on the Mopani leaves. So have a look at this worm. It's quite sizable, but what's prevalent are those beautiful orange, yellow, black, grey and white colors on it. And in nature we call these colors apismatic, which refers to the fact that creatures that display these colors are usually poisonous. Remember, when we refer to poison or venom, the difference is that when something is poisonous, it has to be ingested to have an effect on you. When something is venomous, the venom actually has to be injected into you by either a bite or a sting. So snakes, scorpions and spiders are venomous, where a creature that has a toxin or a poison in its body, like some butterfly species, are poisonous. In the case of the Mopani worm, he's actually not that poisonous, but he's using the mechanism more as a scare tactic. So he's mimicking the fact that his colors display that he may be poisonous. And we know that they're not that poisonous because they are much sought after for eating by many different creatures. Some birds, but more importantly, humans love eating them as a high source of protein. The Mopani tree in its own right is very unique in the sense that it has many different adaptations to surviving in different climates. Now, if you look at one of the leaves, and we refer to this whole thing as a leaf, this is a leaflet only on either side, and the two leaflets together form the leaf. These trees are very prevalent in hot, dry climates, and they've adapted a very unique mechanism to avoid evapotranspiration or water loss when it's really hot. You'd notice at the base of each leaflet there's a small tiny coloration difference, and those two little bulges there are glands, and we refer to them as palfinae or a palfinus. During the process of photosynthesis, when this tree utilizes solar energy to convert it to carbohydrates, these palfinae actually fill up with carbohydrates and then swell out, and then causes motor movement in the leaflet, causing the two leaflets to close, and thereby in the hot part of the day there's less surface area exposed to the sun to help prevent water loss. Apart from that, if you look in the center of the two leaflets, there's a small tiny little vestige, a little protrusion there,
Looks like a frizzled up dry leaf. We call this a terminal leaflet, and essentially what this refers to is the fact that this tree actually used to have an additional leaflet in the middle between these two leaflets, but again, to try and combat water loss, the tree over time reduced that middle leaflet into that small little vestige there, and again just allowing for there to be less surface area exposed to the sun. Now back to the Mopani worm, they're very specific to the Mopani trees, and their life cycle associates with these trees. After the first spring rains, the Mopani moths would climb out of the ground, crawl out the ground. They'd mate, fly around, land on the Mopani trees, lay their eggs, and then the worms will vigorously, once they've hatched, start feeding on the Mopani leaves, and then crawl back into the soil, spend 7 months underground. So there's a complete metamorphosis that takes place there. The adult, the egg, the pupa, and the larvae, and we refer to that as a holometabolic life cycle. Being such an interesting tree, the scientific name Colophospermum Mopani. So the Mopani being the Shona, which is one of the African dialects for butterfly or moth-looking leaf. And as you noticed earlier on, this could superficially resemble a butterfly or a moth. And more interestingly is the Colophospermum. Spermum makes reference to the seed, and colophos comes from a substance called rosin, which we find in resin. And if you crack the seeds open, there aren't really seeds around at the moment, but they have then a very sticky liquid inside, hence sticky or oily seed is what the genus refers to. A set of relatively fresh buffalo tracks there. Another animal that we can come and look for a little bit later once we've completed our search for the lion. As we're progressing along on our journey looking for the lion, we're stumbling onto other things of interest, and in this particular case here, you can see an area that's been excavated quite extensively, quite vigorously by a porcupine. This is very typical of porcupine, digging around the base of young, small, nourishing trees. And then if you look in close at the bottom of that sapling, you'll notice there is gnawing marks where the porcupine has taken the bark off. They feed on bark and roots predominantly as part of their diet, and it's quite nice to stumble upon these places where you can see that they've actively dug and then fed at the base of the tree. Good afternoon, so here we are again. So you'd find it interesting, we jumped from this morning to this afternoon's drive. This morning, I think, largely was taken up by us trying to find those lion, which unfortunately we still continued tracking for quite a long time after we saw the tracks initially, and we didn't find the lion. They crossed much further south. During us tracking the lion, we saw a lot of other interesting things. We came across the porcupine, the Mopani worms. And while we were looking at the Mopani worms, we also heard a leopard call, which we then followed up on, but was also unsuccessful in that particular instance. And I don't know if you can remember, but I also pointed out during the morning to a fresh, relatively fresh buffalo track. And what I want to do this afternoon is head back to that area where I saw that track and try and follow up and see maybe we're lucky with some buffalo for this afternoon. Alright, we hit the jackpot pretty much. We didn't have to look very far. We just went in that general area where we saw the track this morning and followed up on it a little bit. We came across this small group of buffalo. A small group of bulls. One of the features that you can see on a buffalo to try and distinguish between a bull and a cow is on top of the head is quite a significant horn keratin growth there, referred to as the boss. It almost looks like they've got a middle parting, and that's a lot more prevalent with the bulls than with the cows. This is what we will call a bachelor group. These bulls often break away from large herds, form these little groups, and then often attach themselves to big herds when herds come through. So there's a significant amount of migration that takes place between these big herds by both bulls and cows. There's also another phenomena with much older bulls that start isolating themselves and not hanging around with herds so much. And you often find them as an individual, or maybe two or three, in places, the most unexpected places, especially if you're on a bushwalk, where you wouldn't really want to walk into them. We refer to those as Duggar Boys. The term Duggar Boy comes from cement runners, people who used to work in the building construction industry, and they used to run with wheelbarrows full of cement. The slang term for cement is duggar. And often when these bulls wallow in those mud wallows or pans, they cake themselves with mud and then walk away and take it elsewhere. And when they're caked with mud like that, it's as if we refer to them as duggar runners or cement runners, hence the term or the name Duggar Boy. And so we conclude this afternoon's game drive. Another soul safari in the bag. Hope you've enjoyed it.